Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Day Chats. Today we have an interesting little start, considering that this is now like the second or third time that I have to record this episode. I wanted to record it on my phone as well. That way we could upload it onto YouTube and there would be like an actual video form of this podcast episode. But when I was recording it halfway through the episode, it just randomly stopped recording, nothing saved. And I just think it's a little strange considering that the iPhone 13 or however number it is, whatever number it is coming out soon. This has never happened before. And honestly, like, not gonna lie, I was a little bummed because we were like a solid, like halfway into the episode and gone. And the only reason why I had to record it is because I referenced me recording it so much that it just wouldn't make sense if I just continued using the audio. I don't know. It's like this whole thing. But anyway, let's get into the episode because we have so much to cover and just so much I want to tell you guys. I kind of just want to have such a super casual episode today, still talking about what we're going to talk about, but keeping it super cash. So let me go ahead and explain to you how we're going to do this. So today's episode, as I told you guys last week, is going to be on self-love and that self-worth journey. And I have been on this journey for a while now. I feel like what I'm doing at this moment in time is working. And I wanted to share that journey with you guys. I wanted to share what I'm doing. I hopefully would like to share how the journey is going over time. I have my good days and I have my bad days. You know, I'm not perfect. Life isn't perfect. So we have good days and bad days, but that's okay. And we're going to talk about them. So the biggest thing I've done is I actually bought a book from Barnes and Noble, and it's actually a workbook. The workbook is called Your Body is Not an Apology Workbook: Tools for Living Radical Self-Love. And the author is Sonia Renee Taylor. And this book is honestly amazing. It's such an easy read and it asks questions that are surface level at the beginning, but just enough to get you comfortable with opening up. I don't know about you, but I am so uncomfortable, even to this day, talking about my feelings and talking about how things affect me. And I know I share a lot on this podcast, but these are just things that I'm comfortable sharing. You know, these are things that I've worked on over the years, but there's still so much more that I won't even admit to myself. And it's like, I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my gut. I know it in my mind, but I don't say things out loud, or I don't even say them in my head as a complete sentence, because if I say it as a sentence, I'm admitting to whatever the case is. So if it's an insecurity or if it's a specific scenario that happened that I'm still, holding on to, because I don't know if I ever shared this with you guys, but I'm actually like super like, I'm a really resentful person. It's not something I'm proud of. It's something that I'm working on, but I am definitely the one to hold grudges. Like, I am not the one that you want to mess with. Like I said, it's something I'm working on over the years. I've gotten a lot better. Like, if I have a fallout with someone and we do harm to each other or someone does me dirty, like, I've just gotten to a point where I just cut them off, like, I don't need that kind of energy in my life. And it's easy for me to cut people off sometimes. But yeah, that was a total side note. But I forgot where I was going with that. I'm sure it'll come back to me. But yeah, so there are things that I don't even admit to myself yet. And some of these questions in this book have gotten me to a point where, without even realizing it, I'm opening up to myself about things that have hurt me in the past or have made an impact on me, whether it's positive or negative. And I've noticed that I don't necessarily sometimes answer the questions in order. So, for example, if it asks me how I feel about making a change and putting it into practice, maybe I'll answer in a way of like how I think it'll make me feel, not what I'm going to do to change it. And when it comes to answering the question about how do I think it'll make me feel to, do change, then I'll answer in like all the ways that I'll do it. And I think it's pretty interesting that I can do that because I can do this at my own pace. I know nobody's going to read this. I mean, obviously, I'm going to talk about it on here, but I don't know. It's a sense of comfort knowing that I'm finally at a place where I can be honest with myself. And I think that's the biggest first step that we can take when we're starting our self-love journey. Well, actually, let me backtrack. The first step that one needs to take when embarking on a self-love journey and a self-worth journey is being able to recognize that we are lacking self-love, self-respect, or self-worth. It could be that you're lacking all, or it could be that you're lacking some. Nonetheless, that is a very first step. You can't change something if you don't feel that there's a problem, if you don't acknowledge that there's a problem and you don't believe that there's an issue, or you don't believe that something needs to be changed, then there's not going to be anything in you to make you determined enough to change. And notice how I didn't say motivate, because motivation comes and goes. And with anything in life, some days you're going to be motivated and some days you aren't. But the thing that's going to push you to the next level, the thing that's going to keep you going is your determination. So it has to be that you are determined to make this change. You are determined to embark on this journey. And you guys, it's not easy. It's not like a walk in the park. A lot of this is unpacking all of these emotions that you probably never even knew that you were holding on to all this resentment, holding on to all this pain, holding on to all these things that little by little have just added to the reason why you don't feel worthy, why you don't feel like you can be loved for who you are, why you don't feel like you can be accepted for who you truly are or who you want to be, or why you feel that you need to change who you are just so other people like you. So all these things can't happen until you acknowledge that there needs to be a change. We don't have to look at change as a negative thing. Once we recognize that we want to make this change, we want to go on this journey for self-love, then we can look at it in a positive light and understanding that while it may be difficult and while it's going to bring up things that we may not be ready to face, we are still determined to make our best effort. And that's really all you can do. All you can do is put your best foot forward, try your best, and just show up for yourself every day. That is what's going to build your determination. Showing up every single day, even on the days that you don't want to, even on the days where you feel like, what's the point? Even on the days where it feels like the world is against you and it'd be easier to conform to what society or what other people want you to be. Even on those days, you have to show up for yourself. And it doesn't have to be like this crazy thing when I say show up for yourself. So let's break it down. As I mentioned, we have to be able to recognize that there's an issue, and we have to be able to recognize that we want to make this change, because this change and this journey cannot begin unless you genuinely want to do this for yourself, unless you finally reach a place in your life and in your mental ability to accept the journey. Because it could be that maybe you want to do this, but you're just not in a place right now where you're mentally able to go through this journey. And that's okay. Try it anyway, because whatever is going to happen during that journey, you're going to learn and you're going to grow. There's going to come a point in your life when you're finally going to say, I want to love me for me. And that's at the point where I got that. I felt like I was trying to make changes that were positive changes for me, good changes for me, for my own well-being, but I wasn't doing them for me. Yeah, maybe a part of it was, but a big part of it was because I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to fill this idea that other people had for me. And like I said, some of these things are good for me. So what's the issue? The issue is that, just as I mentioned, if you're not doing it for you, no amount of motivation is going to get you to do the work. So I finally got to this point where I said, no, I want to do this for me. I know I deserve so much more. And I'm getting to this point where I'm starting to realize what it is that I deserve. And before you ask, okay, what do you deserve? Okay, like we're still working on it. Okay. We're building up that mentality of like what it is that we deserve. And we can talk about it a little bit later on in the episode, give some examples. But I started working on a list about some lessons that I've learned along the way. I'm going to be 25 soon. And like I mentioned in the last episode, I just feel like in the past couple of years, my mentality has shifted a lot. And so I made a list of all the things that I've learned in the past almost 25 years. And while making that list, I realized that a lot of that are things that I've been able to finally implement in my life. And because I've been able to implement those things in my life, I've been able to continue on this self-love and self-worth journey. I've gotten to a point where I've accepted that there's a lot of things in my life that I need to heal from. There's a lot of the things in my life where I need help healing from, and I can't do it alone, and that's okay. So I started going to therapy. And that for me was a huge step forward for me. I think I just reached my 1 year of going to therapy consistently. And I can honestly tell you, I have grown so much in this 1 year of going to therapy and finally having a safe space to talk about my feelings, because it's something that I've always struggled with. It's allowed me to recognize that in friendships and relationships, I have a voice too. And there's nothing wrong with me being able to voice that opinion and say enough is enough if it's not benefiting me or if it's not a healthy relationship. And you heard that in the last episode when I was talking about outgrowing friendships. The me a couple years ago would have never, ever considered that outgrowing a friendship is a part of life. I would have taken it so personal. I would have blamed myself or probably honestly blamed the other person. I would have put blame on someone. And whether that blame was on me or someone else, either way, it would have done some kind of harm to me. Again, because I tend to be a resentful person. So if I would have placed the blame on someone else, I would have held that resentment on them. I would have said, okay, it's their fault. They're the reason why we're not friends anymore. They're the ones who fucked up. They're the ones who are messed up, not me. And it would have just blown up my superiority complex, which is a whole different discussion. And if I would have placed the blame on myself, then I would have felt bad for everything that happened. And I would have tried to make the situation better. And depending on what kind of relationship it is, it could have been that I, in the past, would have wanted to make it work. Because if I tend to put the blame on myself, I want to ensure that things are working out. I don't want things to outgrow or, dissolve. So maybe I would have stayed in a friendship or in a relationship that, not that it's toxic, but just isn't a healthy one, a positive one, you know? So these are the things when I say that you just have to show up for yourself. You have to do the work and you have to embark on this journey. And the best advice that I got this past week was my professor saying, be gentle with yourself for being human. Forgive yourself and free yourself of all the things that are hurting you. One of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself is to be your own best friend. And what do you think she meant by that? Do you think she means that we should isolate ourselves and, not have friends? Or do you think that maybe she means that we should prioritize ourselves so much where we're the only ones in our own opinions that we take considerations of? I'm starting to feel like a teacher, so I'm just going to tell you. No, what she meant by that is when you have a best friend and you care for that person, When they're having a bad day, when they're down on themselves, or when they're picking on themselves for something, what do you tell them? Hey, you know, you're a great person. You got this. You're so strong. I love you. You try to raise their spirits, right? You don't let your friend talk bad about themselves when they're down. Why? Because you know that they're a good person, because you know that talking down on themselves isn't going to help them. And what do you want to do as their best friend? You want to lift them up, right? So that's what she means by be your own best friend. Oftentimes, it's so easy for us to talk down on each other. We are our own worst critics, our own worst bullies, our own worst judgmental selves to each other. So be your own best friend. She gave the example that she actually does not like going to the gym. She doesn't like working out. So when she goes to the gym and she's like, ugh, I don't want to be here. Like, why did I come? It's such a waste of time. She quickly will catch herself. I mean, she's had decades to practice this, but just so I can give you that example, she'll catch herself and say, hey, you know what? You're doing a really good job. I'm so proud of you for going to the gym, even though you didn't want to come, because you showed up. You showed up today, and that was courage. And now that I say that, that's another thing that she taught us. Showing up for yourself every day shows courage. It doesn't mean that you have to do something big, but just show up for yourself every day. And it's important when we're embarking on this self-love, self-worth journey that we begin to look at ourselves as our best friend. And this is so much easier said than done, because if you're coming from a place where you hate yourself, you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, I look disgusting. I feel so gross. Why would anyone want to spend time with me? If those are the things that you're thinking when you look at yourself in the mirror, or when you're thinking about yourself, then it may seem so impossible to be your own best friend. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's try to make it more feasible. Let's try to make it more realistic. So what can you do to be your own best friend? These are just some examples. I would love to hear what you start implementing when it comes to you being your own best friend. But at least for me, I really liked her example. I don't always want to go to the gym. And I oftentimes will be like, oh, I'll just take a rest day. I don't want to do this. So instead of convincing myself that it's okay to take a rest day, which don't get me wrong, it is okay to take a rest day. It is totally fine. It's totally healthy for your body to take a rest day when you've been working out so many days. But I'm talking about it's my 5th day of not working out because I just am too lazy to go. I have the time. I literally have the plans to go, but I just don't go because I just don't want to get myself to go. It's like that. I'm not talking about pushing myself. Okay. Anyway, so what can I do? So I'm going to talk to myself as if I was my best friend. What would my best friend tell me? Or what would I tell my best friend? I would tell them, hey, you know what? Just go for 5 minutes. Or in this case, just go for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, if you want to go home because you did something, and that's better than nothing. And if after 15 minutes, you want to stay an extra 10, stay an extra 10. If you want to stay an extra 30 minutes, stay an extra 30 minutes. That's already better than what you planned. But at least go for 15 minutes, because you could do 15 minutes. You can commit to that. And after that, it's up to you. Either way, you have a win. So to me, that seems feasible. To me, that seems something that is realistic for me. For you, it may be something different, and that's okay. So I would love for you to take time out of your day every day, or at least start off once a week. It really just depends where you are at with your journey. If you're just starting, try doing this once a week of being your own best friend. Allow yourself to talk to yourself as you would a best friend or someone that you cared about. What would you tell them? What would you tell them coming from your own heart? Don't think about what would someone tell you if they're trying to force you to do something or convince you to do something. Think about it as, how would you talk to your best friend? So I hope that made sense. And I hope that gave you guys some insight on what are some things that I've been working on and some things that I think that, would be a good practice. And again, be gentle with yourself. You're human. Just show up for yourself every day, whether it's a big showing up or a little showing up. Sometimes showing up for yourself is just as simple or as small as waking up every day and getting up. It doesn't have to be something crazy. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to clean my whole house and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, no, like it could be today I took a shower. Today I brushed my hair. Today I put away my clothes. Today I washed one load of laundry. Today I washed the dishes. Today I did something that made me happy. Today I gave myself a compliment. Today I smiled at myself for the first time. Today I stopped my mind when I was thinking self-deprecating thoughts. Today I reached out to a friend. Today I did something that excited me. Today I tried something new. It could be whatever it means to you to show up. So don't overthink it. If you find yourself overthinking it, be your own best friend. Be your own best friend. And what would you tell your best friend in this scenario? So I leave you with that for you to reflect and think about. And again, I would love to hear how you guys implement being your own best friend in your day-to-day life. And again, start small. It doesn't have to be something big. Circling back to the workbook, Your Body is Not an Apology. This book is divided by 4 pillars. So essentially, each pillar is one chapter. And what I want to do is I want to go through the workbook. Today will be the introduction of it. And next week we'll be talking about one of the pillars and how I've been implementing that pillar into my life for that week. And we'll go on that way until we're done with all the pillars. And hopefully this will help you guys as well. Go on this journey with me and we can start this together. So the first pillar is taking out the toxic. The second one, mind matters. The third, unapologetic action. And the last, collective compassion. And I want to share a quote that the author put in here that I felt spoke wonders. So in the book, in the introduction, she's talking about how sometimes we view our bodies as a car. Sometimes with a car, you only use it when you need it. You don't think about it. Oftentimes, we don't even take our cars to go get an oil change. We don't check those things. And sometimes if your car breaks down, you go fix it. Or sometimes, depending on how bad the breakdown is, you wait until it's really, really bad and you have no other choice but to go get it fixed or get a new car. But she makes the analogy that we are not cars. We cannot just simply get a new body if it breaks down. Because if our bodies break down, we essentially can assume that we did not wake up the next day. And I'm going to read you a paragraph in a quote that talks more about that. And again, this is from the book, Your Body is Not an Apology Workbook by Sonia Renee Taylor. There are some key differences between a car and your body. The primary one being that should you wake up and find that your car won't start, you will either buy a new car or find a new mode of transportation. Should you find that your body won't start, we can safely assume you didn't wake up. To treat our bodies like cars is to essentially treat ourselves like something disposable. You, my love, are not disposable. Besides, your body wants nothing more than to be your buddy through this ride called life. And that means that you and your body will need a solid set of tools for the road. That to me was so eye-opening of how we treat our body sometimes as we take it for granted. We really take our body for granted, especially if we're able-bodied. We take things for granted. So it was eye-opening for me to realize that I need to put more TLC into my own body, and not just the physical body, but also my mind, to make sure that I'm functioning as a whole, that I'm nurturing myself as a whole. Another line that spoke out to me on here, she was talking about how thinking is a big component about this journey. We need to be able to navigate our thoughts and navigate our emotions. And if you know me, I'm a huge overthinker. That's something that I've always struggled with. I overthink everything, especially when it comes to dealing with another person. And so, a line that spoke to me is when we avoid our thoughts, they go rogue. And if you're anything like me, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone listening, I have said it time and time again. I tend to push my feelings down. I push them down because I don't want to think about them. And just like how Miss Sonia Renee Taylor said, when we don't pay attention to our thoughts, they will go rogue. And that is so true for me in my case. And I'd love to know if it's for you guys too. If you're an overthinker, the more you try to push it down, yeah, maybe it's going to work for a little bit. But after a while, they are going to go crazy. Your overthinking and your paranoia is just going to get worse. Your thoughts become consuming and they become so negative after a while, at least in my experience. So it's something that, again, I've been working on, and it's hard. I'm not even going to say, it's easy. It's hard. And the best thing that I've been able to do is just work on myself as a whole and just remind myself that overthinking oftentimes comes from a place of other things triggering that. So if I'm in a relationship with someone and I'm overthinking their response, I have to remember that their intent is not always what I interpret it to be. And in order to clear up that miscommunication or clear up that doubt in my mind, I need to be clear on where I stand. So I need to ask for clarification. And it's not always easy, because usually when I start overthinking, it's because of things are already going like a little downhill, or I'm arguing with someone. Like if I'm in a relationship with someone, like we're arguing, then I start to overthink things. But it's just having that ability to catch yourself in that moment and remember, like, okay, this is how I'm interpreting this. Am I overthinking it? What's my evidence, essentially? When I'm overthinking something, I have to ask myself, what is my evidence? Do I have like specific examples where I could essentially prove that I have a valid reason to think the way I do? If I can't come up with a valid specific example to prove my point, then that just lets me know that I'm probably overthinking this and I need to communicate and I need to clarify rather than make assumptions of what that person's intent was. And again, it's not always easy. It's definitely a struggle. It's definitely something that I continue to work on. And right now, since I'm not dating, it hasn't been too much of an issue, but you live and you learn. So I know this was a very carefree episode. Again, I really am starting to enjoy just coming on here and talking from the heart rather than having an outline or a script. I think this was a good introduction episode and just an episode that allows you to start thinking about where you stand with your self-love journey. And if you feel you're ready to start embarking on this journey to finding your self-love and your self-worth and strengthening that bond within yourself, then I invite you to join us next week as we begin talking about the first pillar. Until then, I'm so, so proud of you for all that you have done to be here today and showing up for yourself and being yourself. And I'm so proud of you for embarking on this journey, whether you feel you're ready or not. So until then, embrace the day.